it really here with the nuclear threats, you've got an intersection of three things. You've got the intersection of weapons, geography, and rhetoric. Because the special military operation is not looking very special. And if drones can get through to your capital city in the way they don't seem to be able to get through to Kyiv at the moment because of the air defense, it produces that uncertainty. So it makes sense from a Ukrainian perspective.
Does it just not escalate the war to a point where it gets incredibly dangerous if you're agitating Russia to the point where they are, threatening nuclear war again?
Well, that's a different issue. So it really here with the nuclear threats, you've got an intersection of three things. You've got the intersection of weapons, geography, and rhetoric. Now, Medvedev has always been the rhetoric general in chief throughout this, and indeed, he's often said that Ukraine shouldn't exist. The way I look at this really is they seek leverage in any future negotiations, because they've mentioned it specifically in relation to the territories which they've illegally annexed, the ones that they say they've occupied. That is a different thing than what is normally felt to be the existential threat if Russia were to be invaded, and there's no notion of that. So rather like the African-Russian talks over the last few days, when Putin said that he would look at it, but he gave a cool reception. And the cool reception was because he wants people to look at the new realities. And the new realities, as he sees them, is that Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson are Russian territory. Under the UN Charter, of course, they are Ukrainian territory, and that is always going to be a sticking point until we get either to a decisive military victory or the improbability of a military victory, or the cost for one of the other sides is too great for them to bear. That's where you come back to the drone strikes. Is it a cost that Russia is too great for Russia to bear, but it is not existential for Russia in the way that the invasion and the absolutely genocidal intent of Russia over Ukraine is.
What is on the table here from Russia's point of view when it comes to nuclear weapons? What and where might they launch from?
Well, I don't think they will. And there really been three politics of. And the first one is the politics of fear, because everyone fears the launch of nuclear weapons. But there's an absolute difference between the rhetoric and things like imminency. So in terms of indicators and warnings, there is absolutely no indicator and warning that we have nuclear weapons which are about to be launched. And there are a number of things that we would look for to see that if this were going to be happen. The first thing would be specific nuclear threats emanating from the Kremlin, not just from Medvedev. As I said, he's been the rhetoric general in chief. The second one would potentially be a rout of Russian forces for which Putin is personally blamed at home. The third one would be the movement of tactical weapons from storage sites into the field. And lastly, we would expect to know the intent that they might want to use them by intercepted signals intelligence. None of those apply. And I know that Medvedev used the word about global nuclear fire, but that is at the extreme right of the arc to do with either Armageddon, nuclear apocalypse, or spasm warfare. None of that will pertain. And indeed, I think one of the interesting things is the Chinese peace plan. Point 8 of that is that nuclear weapons must not be used and nuclear weapons cannot be fought. So there would be pressure on Russia by the Chinese not to use them. And I think if they did use them in any form, even though it might be a small dollar yield, then their access to the international community in the future would be sorely circumscribed.
Yeah, Vladimir Putin saying over the weekend that he would be prepared to look and think about the Chinese peace plan, and that put forward by African leaders as well.